Uh, for those of you who are visitors, we are right now in the middle of a series, and we had Truckers Day, and we've got a Motorcycle Day coming up, and so in order to stay on track, we're in the middle of a series. It's called the Knockout Series, and if you were at our church, you've seen it online. The stage is sort of decorated up like a boxing ring, and we've got boxing gloves. We're trying to take out issues that affect the Christians today, disciples of today, and through all of this thinking, the thinking behind this, the reasoning behind this is we have become sort of a society that's sort of been just gets accustomed to some of the things that the Bible talks about as being sin, or the Bible talks about things that God hates, and yet with social media the way it is, and I'm on social media a lot, I look at it a lot, and I'm guilty, I know, but with social media, with texting, with emailing, that type of communication that we have anymore with technology, we don't have to speak things. We can do things without actually doing them, physically doing them, or audibly doing it. So in that, we all know that murder and rape and stealing and things like that are wrong. Those are sins that are quite obvious, and if caught doing any of those things, the government will take care of us, right? The law will come into effect. But however, we've got some issues that the church deals with a lot. Not Light in the Valley doesn't, but I know other churches do. They deal with it a lot, of some things that could use a little discipline, or they could use some rooting out. Some of the series we started with the fact of unbelief, if it's a sin or not, or if it's something that God is pleased with. So we knocked out unbelief. We knocked out pride. Nobody at Light in the Valley is left with any pride. Okay, and we knocked out unforgiveness. Is unforgiveness okay, or what did we conclude on that? Anybody? Uh-huh. Unforgiveness, nobody has unforgiveness at our church anymore. And then Brennan brought idleness the last time that we had it at church, and then we had Trucker Sunday. And so here we are, church picnic, and this one today is sort of difficult because I found myself again in the middle of this topic. And just because culture and because society says that it's okay doesn't mean that it's okay. But today's subject and our opponent today for the Knockout Series, we could have, if I'd have known this was this available, we'd have made this a boxing ring this morning. But our opponent today is gossip. And what is gossip? Is it a sin? Is it something that God likes, or is it something that he doesn't like? We're going to look into the subject of gossip. Okay? It's a difficult one, and I found myself very guilty. And if you are sitting here this morning and you say, well, you know what, I don't find it hard. It's easy for me. I don't talk about other people. Well, guess what? I want you to stick around, because by the time I'm done, it might hit you too. So here we go. What is gossip? Well, Wikipedia says gossip is idle talk or rumor, especially about the personal or private affairs of others. So that's what the world is saying that gossip is. Okay? I'll say it again. Gossip is idle talk or rumor, especially about the personal or private affairs of others. Now, we've all been part of a gossip circle, I'm sure. If you're above the age of 4, you've been in the midst of a gossip circle somewhere in your life. You've either been talked about or you've done the talking. Am I right? This isn't an altar call. You don't need to raise your hand. I have. I've been a part of it, and it's shameful for me to say, but it is a part of what sort of how things go anymore. And if you don't think you are, maybe these conversations, maybe the way this conversation starts, you think, well, it's not really gossip. Maybe if you are in a conversation and it starts like this, you won't believe what I've heard. Or, have you heard about so-and-so? If your conversations are starting in that way, or if it's this one, will you promise not to tell anybody? Can you keep a secret? If those are the way your conversations are starting, I guarantee you, I would put a lot of money down saying that that's the start of a very gossipy type. It smells like gossip to me. Okay? So Rick Warren says it this way. When we are talking about a situation with somebody, who is neither part of the problem or part of the solution, then we're probably gossiping. Did you get that? Now that's Rick Warren, so let's say it again. He says it this way: when we are talking about a situation with somebody who is neither part of the problem or part of the solution, we're probably gossiping. And you say, well, that's what Rick Warren says. Well, let's see what God says about it, okay? God, in the Bible, in Proverbs chapter 6, verse 16, says this: there are 6 things that the Lord hates, and 7 that are detestable to him. So God, these are things that God does not just not like. He absolutely despises them. Detest is a strong word. It's used in the NIV. Detest is a very strong word. He despises these things. There's 6 that he hates. There's 7 that he despises, right? What is that 7th one? In verse 19 it says, a false witness who pours out lies and a person who stirs up conflict in the community. I didn't know it was that quiet out here. Let's say it again. This is NIV version. A false witness who pours out lies and a person who stirs up conflict in the community. None of us do that. None of us have ever been a part of that. I know we've not been. God detests gossip. Why? Why does he hate it so bad? Why does he despise it? Why does he use that strong verbiage in the Bible about gossip? It could be this. I know if you guys talk about me, I'm all right with that. I can handle it. I'm 40 years old. It hurts. But if I hear rumors about me, and I have, that stuff hurts. But you talk about my kids, and I will take it to the next level of defending them. Am I right? If you have kids that are old enough to be gossiped about, and somebody gossips about them, what happens? Mother hen comes out, right? The cluck part of it. For me, I get really defensive, like, no way, my kids have not done that. You know, that hurts. And so I think if you can use the analogy, like, that hurts me worse than you talking about me, okay? So that's how I feel God looks at it. We're all his children. And if we start talking about each other, that's the same, he feels the same way about that as we do when people talk about our kids. And so I think that's something to keep in mind of why he detests gossip so bad. But isn't it something that there is Becky, I ran this by her and she said, are you really going to say that? I said, yeah, I'm going to, because there's something about gossip that is actually sickening, attractive. It's kind of fun. Have you heard? Pushed you cow. I can't believe it. Right? It's fun. It feels good. Why is that? Solomon, the wisest man who ever lived, said this in Proverbs 18, verse 8. He says, words of a gossip are like choice morsels. They go down into the inmost parts. Those things, those words that you say about somebody else, they sit and it feels good because, you know, why is that? Why would we say that feels good? I think there's 3 reasons that it feels good. The first one is we may feel more important. So if I can talk about Dylan and put him down, I'm in a conversation and I know that we're maybe competing for something or not even competing for something. We're just living life together, and I hear them put Dylan down, and well, if I can, that feels good because what it does is it elevates me, right? So that could be one reason we do it. The other reason is so that we feel more better about ourselves. More important, better about ourselves. If I know I can bring Julie down by what I say, it makes me feel more important and better about myself. Or maybe it's just the sheer fact it's entertainment. Maybe we're bored. We're sitting around a fire. We have nothing else to talk about. And we just talk about Phil and Elsie. Right? Did you hear what they're doing? Whatever. Right? It's entertainment. God hates it. So what's another reason why God would hate gossip so bad? I think, just for me, I'm a Christian, but I'm not perfect. I think it's a direct reflection of the darkness still left over in my heart. That's a strong statement, but I do believe that with all my heart. I believe that when I resort to talking about others, it's a direct reflection of the darkness still left in my heart. I know there's a local business who has a policy about gossip. First time, they get a warning. If employees talk about each other, or they talk about the business, or they talk about the boss, and the second time they're fired. They get one warning. Why do you think that is? Because nobody wants to work in an environment that is dramatic and unhealthy and lethal like that. It causes. Now, what if we did that at church? I'll keep going. That's not in my notes. I'll keep going. So would we agree that everyone here who's able to comprehend has been involved some way or other in gossip? I'll be the first to raise my hand. Have we? Can we be honest with ourselves? We've been involved in it, right? And as disciples or followers of Jesus, and that's what we're going after at our church this year, the whole theme of 2017 is discipleship. How do we become better followers? How can we follow Jesus closer? And I tell you what, gossip is not one way that we do that. God is calling us to a higher standard. He's calling us to be above that. That's below the line of what he has called it, of the standard that he wants us to live. And then, so you're sitting there and you're saying, well, I can't even talk to anybody. And maybe the conversation after the lunch today, during lunch, maybe the conversation will be boring. I don't know. I can play music for you if you want me to. So we don't talk about each other. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about, you guys know what I'm talking about. There's a Mast and Maisie cat, common sense, right? How do we overcome this sin of gossip? And I have 3 questions. I like to, in our staff meetings and in meetings at the store, whenever I have a staff meeting, I like to do what I call compass questions. So this service here today will be put on a compass chart on Thursday at noon. And the questions that we ask are, what was right about it, what was wrong about it, what was missing here today, or what was confusing here today. So if you can answer those 4 questions in any aspect of life, it helps you determine where you're at and where you're headed, right? So we do that. We do that on a weekly basis at church. We do it on a weekly basis at the store. I do it a lot in my life. Where am I at? What's missing? What's confusing? What was right and what was wrong? Okay? So if you could weigh your conversations on some compass questions. The first compass question that I would want you to ask every time you have a conversation is this. Is my conversation, is it helpful or is it hurtful? If you can weigh your conversation against a compass question like that, is it helpful? Is what I'm talking about today, is it being helpful or is it being hurtful? Paul says it this way in Ephesians chapter 4, verse 29. He says it this. Do not let any unwholesome talk come out of your mouth, but only what is helpful for building others up. Is this conversation helpful or hurtful? Proverbs 16, wisest man, again, Solomon says it this way. Scoundrels create trouble. Their words are a destructive blaze. We've all been at the receiving end of those blazing words that burn us to the core and they try to ruin our character. And all it is it is a direct attack from the enemy to try to mar who God has created us to be as children of his. He loves us. And the last thing he wants is for us to talk about each other. A troublemaker, this is in Proverbs 16, verse 28, a troublemaker plants seeds of strife, and a gossip separates the best of friends. We've seen that, and I've seen that in my life, where the best of friends have been separated due to things that were said that were unnecessary, completely unnecessary and out of line. Is my conversation being helpful or hurtful? I tell you what, if we're talking about Stecca, this is something that I catch myself doing. Not talking about Stecca, but I'm going to use Dan here as an example. So Dan is an awesome guy. We all know he has a giving heart, and he has a go-get-it attitude and character, right? But, oh, can he be aggravating? Right? But you know what? Dan is probably one of the best carpet layers we've ever seen. You ever watch him lay carpet? All right. So that's just an example. I'm using that as an example of how we camouflage our gossip, and we do a compliment sandwich. We compliment him on the front end, we slander him in the middle, and then we compliment him on the end, right? We do that. I've done that. And we call it right. We say it's right because, you know what? I can talk about Dan as long as I give him more compliments than what I slander him with. I'm guilty of that. I've done that. Sorry, Dan. I love you, man. But let's be honest with ourselves. We do this, and we do it in the name of Jesus. We do it in the name of Christian. And it hurts our God. It hurts our Creator. Then you say this. I used to work with a guy. I'm talking about it. How am I going to get this story said? I used to work with a guy who would say, if it's the truth, it's not gossip. I'm not gossip. I would confront him and say, why do you always gossip about people? It's not gossip if it's the truth. If it's the truth, it's fair game. The scripture says this. Is it helpful or is it hurtful? Not true or untrue has nothing to do with it. Here's the deal. Everything you say must be true, but everything that is true must not be said. Get it? Everything you say must be true, but everything that is true does not need to be said. Is it being helpful or is it being hurtful? That's the first one that you need to weigh your conversation. That's a compass question for you on weighing your conversation. The second compass question for you is, am I making something private public? Am I making something that should be kept private public? Proverbs 11, verse 12 through 13 says this, it is foolish to belittle one's neighbor. A sensible person keeps quiet. A gossip goes around telling secrets, but those who are trustworthy can keep a confidence. That again, spoken by the wisest man who ever lived. Am I making private matters public? And again, we go back to our social media and the way that we communicate without actually picking up the phone and calling and telling someone. It doesn't seem quite as grotesque. It doesn't seem quite as evil if we type it or write it as it does speaking it, doesn't it? There's a difference. There's a difference in it. We say more via text and email and Twitter and Facebook than we would person to person and talk face to face. But am I making private matters public? Proverbs 25, when arguing with your neighbor, doesn't say we don't argue with him, but when arguing with him, don't betray another one's secret. Others may accuse you of gossip, and you will never regain your good reputation. There are things in our lives that happen. There are things within the church. There are things within friendship. There are things within groups that happen that need to stay in that group. It doesn't need to be told to the public. Is my conversation being helpful or hurtful? And am I making private matters public? We okay so far? So some of you have sat here and said, well, I don't get involved in any of that. Good for you. But I've got news for you. I'm still going to step on your toes here this morning. So just put them on out there. I'll stump on them lightly. Question number 3. This is the third compass question. If you want to know you've been involved in gossip or not, here's your third question. Am I permitting others to gossip? Am I permitting others to gossip? A good question to ask when a conversation starts in as, hey, did you hear? I cannot believe. Can you keep a secret? And that's where you say, you know what? I don't want to keep that secret. Please don't tell me. That's what I mean by that compass question. Am I permitting others to gossip? Proverbs 17:4. Wrongdoers eagerly listen to gossip. Liars pay close attention to slander. Right there are two characters that I don't want on my name tag. Wrongdoers eagerly listen to gossip, and liars pay close attention to slander. Not only is it wrong to say gossip, but it's wrong to listen as well, according to what the Bible says. So if you're listening to it, you're participating in it. There, I said it. So I think the number one way is to set boundaries before you get into those conversations and know where you stand on those types of conversations, because words do matter. Words have a lot of power. Jesus says it this way. Matthew 12, verse 36 through 37, he says it this way about power of words. I tell you that everyone in this, hearing of me right now, everyone will one day have to give account on the day of judgment for every empty word they have spoken. For by your words you will be acquitted, by your words you will be condemned. Your words matter. They have the power of life and of death. I just challenge you guys as we think about this gossip. Every time we speak, we need to speak well of each other. We need to build each other up. We need to continue to try and bring the best out of everyone. Always believing the best, never assuming the worst. And we live in a society, believe me, I know, I'm caught up in it too, that resorts to the worst. Resorts to, if you watch the news, if you listen to the news, it'll soon give you the blues of what's going on. And that's how, when you feed on that type of thing, that's how your personality becomes, that's how your attitude becomes, because words have power. And always remember this, be a part of the solution, not a part of the problem. I believe God is calling us, as all of us, not just that Light in the Valley, but everybody that's here, to eliminate our participation with gossip and with slander and unnecessary words. I'm just going to ask you guys, if I'm going to close it down. I'm just going to ask you guys, if you guys want to just say, you know what? It's not a secret. Everybody here has been involved in it. I've been involved in it. I'll be the first one to say, I would want to just have prayer this morning and ask, you know what, God, could you lift this burden of gossip? Could you lift the spirit of slander off of us? So I'm going to invite you, if that's you this morning, you want to take it to the next level and be a part of a discipleship group that builds up and edifies and continues to encourage each other. If you would want to be a part of that, I encourage you to stand to your feet. And we'll just have a word of prayer.